रिकॉर्डिंग स्टार्ट कर दें, ठीक है? वंदे मातरम. I am back, Siddharth Muharka. Before you, I am the advocate on record of Supreme Court of India. I own a firm called Law Chamber of Siddharth Muharka. Now, today we shall be speaking on the National Child Right Commission Act 2005. Now, I'll be sharing my screen so that you can clearly understand the concept of Child Right Commission. Is my screen now clear? So now this Act, National Child Right Commission Act 2005. What was the purpose of this? As per the preamble, it was for constitution of a national commission and state commissions for children. It called for creation of Constitution of Children Court. The purpose was speedy trial of offences against children, and basic purpose was to implement the Treaty of Convention on Child Rights of the UN, which was acceded by India on 11/12/1992. Now it becomes incumbent upon India to implement the child rights and the effects of the convention as per the convention. Now let's understand what the convention was. Now the UN convention basically was based on human rights and recognizing that family is a fundamental group of society. Now in its preamble, it has recognized that a family is a natural environment for growth and well-being of the child. It also recognizes and defines the rights of every child without discrimination. It also determines the responsibility of family, state, and extended family, and it recognizes extended family and their role in upbringing of the children. Now, there are around 54 articles in the convention. The first article defines the age of the child to be below the age of 18. Now, whenever we see an offense which is made by a person of 17 years, for example, a rape which is done by a juvenile, we always say, what is the need? Why does the government doesn't change the law of the land to make this the age of conviction or the juvenile age to be changed from 18 to 16 or 17, etc. Now, this article comes in between because internationally the child has been defined to be below the age of 18. Now, Article 2 calls for right of no discrimination of any kind, irrespective of guardian's race, color, sex, generation, religion, political or other opinions, nationality, ethnic or social origin, property, disability, birth or other status. State has to protect the child against all forms of discrimination or punishment on the basis of status, activities, expressed opinions or beliefs of child's parents, legal guardians or family members. Now, I'm not stating this as per the provisions made therein. What I have done is I have only extracted the part of it. Of course, in the notes, I shall be uploading even the entire provisions of the entire UN convention. The purpose here, if you see very carefully, it says birth or other status. Now, this effectively means that the right, whether the child is a legitimate child or an illegitimate child, it doesn't make a difference. So you cannot discriminate on that ground, and you cannot also discriminate on ground of the expressed opinion of the child's legal guardian. What Article 3 says is paramount interest of the child and the duty of the state to protect the child interest at all costs. Article 4 states that the parties, state here means the nations which have done it. State parties have to undertake all appropriate legislation, administrative and other measures for implementation of the right recognized in the present convention. Now, this is Article 4, which called for the creation of the Act, and therefore this Act, which is now in force in 2005, mind you, we have ratified in 1992, but the Act came into 2005 on international pressure. Now, Article 5 calls for creation of awareness about responsibility, rights, and duties of parents, or where applicable, the members of the extended family or community as per local customs. Thus, legal guardian must be given appropriate direction and guidance to exercise guidance in exercise of the child rights. Now, Article 6 talks about right to life. The state must endeavor for the survival of every child. The idea is that when the convention was held, there were many nations where there was malnutrition, where there were many other offenses against children. So it casted upon the state a very fundamental duty to ensure that the child has a right to survival. It should not happen that they live like a vegetable state, or after birth they die at a very premature age. Now, Article 7 calls for right to birth, registration, nationality, and parents. So, even if suppose a child is found on a street, he has a right of birth registration, he has a right of nationality. Now, the state has to endeavor to find out who his parents are. And there are provisions which are laid later on that if there are no parents, then what is to be done. Article 8 calls for right to preserve the identity, nationality, relation with parents without unlawful interference. And if it is found that any of these rights are violated, then immediately it has to be restored, and the state has to play a predominant role in it. Now, right to identity would mean if a child is born and is registered as, say, Mr. Raman, and his nationality is Indian, you cannot by any other means say that Raman becomes Pappu or Raman becomes Chotu, and his identity, which is the main name, remains there. Now, today, if you go and see at tea stalls, we see Chotu Chaila. So, that identity of Chotu is not actually Chotu, it is his real name. So, a child has the right to preserve his identity. You cannot add simply for your own convenience the names, tags, hashtags of the name of the person, and cannot play with the identity of the child. I'm sorry, I'll have to go back. Right, Article 9. Right not to be separated from any parents or both parents against their own will, except when law mechanism provides such separation as necessary for the best interest of the child. So today, suppose there is a difference of opinion between two parents. Can one parent take away the child and say, look here, you will not be allowed to meet your other parent? The answer is no. So either it is by mechanism of law, or else it will be treated as an illegal act and a violation of the child rights. And then also the judiciary has to see whether such separation was necessary and in the best interest of the child. If not, then there is this act which is done by one of the parents is illegal. And further, the Article 9 clearly considers that there has to be consideration of all factors, including abuse or neglect of the child by the parent, or one where the parents are living separately, and a decision must be made as to the child's place of residence. In such case, also all interested parties shall be given an opportunity to participate in the proceedings and make their views known. Respect the rights of the child who is separated from one or both parents to maintain personal relations or direct contacts with both parents on regular basis, except if it is contrary to the child's best interest. By the time of convention, it was realized that there is a growing number of cases of divorce, judicial separation, and even apart from judicial separation, the families get split, and it is possible one of the parents may violate the right of the child to meet the other parent. So in such cases, if the court feels that, okay, the interest of the child is in depriving the right of the child to the other parent, then that has to be in consideration with all the factors, including all kinds of abuses or neglects. And further, it has to be, cannot be against the will of the child. And third, the parents have to be heard. And even if there is a separation, unless his welfare does not require that he should not be allowed to access his other parent, the court or the judiciary or the state cannot disallow it. So we must respect the rights of one parent against another parent. Now, in case Article 10, in case of cross countries, the right of the child to access parents will be respected in all manners. Suppose I'll give you a hypothetical example. The father is from Pakistan, mother is from India, child is born in India, he goes to Pakistan, and for some reason, he and his mother are asked to come back to India, or they have come back to India and they are not able to go back. Then in such cases, the right of the child to see the other parent has to be considered by the member states. Upon application, the states cannot say, look here, your mother have gone to India, or your parents are judicially separated, and one stays in Pakistan and one stays in India, so you cannot access the non-custodial parent. So this, in case of cross countries, it was clarified as per Article 10. Now, Article 11. Child must be protected from illegal transfer, including kidnapping in cross countries. So, if an American child is on the border and he is kidnapped by anyone in Mexico, and if that person runs away and sits in Mexico and says, look here, I am not governed by US laws, then it is a duty of the Mexican government to ensure that illegal transfers and kidnapping in cross countries are also discouraged. This also includes illegal transfer domestically. This can happen, for example, somebody X has not paid his dues to Y. He has a 10-year-old son. Y captures him and brings him to the custody and says, look here, Mr. X, if you do not pay my money, I will ensure that your child remains with me as a servant. Now, all this, the state is bound to protect the child as per Article 11. Now, Article 12. The child has a right to form an opinion, and his or her views shall be respected as far as practical. Now, suppose a child has an opinion that, according to him, he should not be going to the park, or he should not go to the temple, or he should not go to the mosque, or he went to the mosque and he was not comfortable, or he went to the temple or church, he was not comfortable. If parents cannot force him to say, look here, every day morning we follow this religion and you have to go there. So his opinion, as far as practical, so if the child is of 2 years, I can understand, the parent can explain him. But if the child is of 14 years and feels, no, I am not comfortable, or I am not comfortable with the particular guru which my mother goes to, or I am not very comfortable with the Maulvi where my father has gone, or I am not comfortable in the church where with the father in the church where my both parents go, then in such cases the right of the child is to be considered prima facie and it is to be implemented as it is. Now, Article 13 says that child has a right to freedom of expression. This right shall include the right to seek, receive, impart information and ideas of all kinds, regardless of frontiers, either orally, in writing, or in print, in the form of art or through any other media of the child's choice. Now, suppose the purpose of this act is that there are many countries where the child is not allowed to speak properly. He has no freedom to see the channel of his choice. A child may want to see, say, Disney World, and somebody sitting in Africa may say, no, this is against our culture. Oh no, I will not allow you to see. So as far as possible, the child's right to have information or seek any ideas of any kind cannot be restricted, and there is no frontier barriers or national barriers, and the child can discuss anything which is of the nature of children's academic or playgroup nature, where he can share it with others. Article 14. State parties shall respect the right of the child to freedom of thought, conscience and religion. Freedom to manifest its own religion and belief may be subject to only such limitations as are prescribed by law and are necessary to protect public safety, order, health, or morals or fundamental right of and freedom to others. Now, suppose a child is there, he says, I am following Islam. His parents are not there, or even if they are there, nobody can say that, look here, since you are saying in a Hindu majority, and I'll take it vice versa, if a Hindu child wants to go to a temple and the area says, no, we will not allow you to practice your own religion within the premises, this is predominant in most of the Arab worlds, then such things will not be permitted. You have to respect the freedom of thought. You have to respect the religious ideas of the child unless it is hazardous to others. For example, a person may say, no, I have seen my religion, according to my religion, I have to give bali or I have to sacrifice a human. then in such cases there can be restriction. Otherwise, no person can restrict the right of the child of freedom of thought and religion. I'll go beyond, a little beyond. Suppose what I understood as this article is that suppose a child is of 16 years old age. He he has seen all kinds of religion and he is attracted towards a particular religion. His parents may not be following that religion. Then also, according to me, if this entire article is seen, the child will have a right to follow his own thoughts and religion. He cannot be said that look here, or the neighbors or the people from his community cannot say that look here, you have no freedom of thought. You feel your religion is not proper, that is wrong, or you have no right to say so, and you cannot practice what you feel right. Till the time he is not violating any one public safety, order, health, moral, or others' rights. Now, Article 15 talks about freedom of forming and joining associations. So basically, when you talk about expression, when you talk about thought, the thought may not be an individual thought. A child may say, I want to join a particular organization or association. It may be an association of art. I, as a child, may feel that, look here, this is an association of 40 people. They are very well doing, or they are incorporating they are promoting art. So in such cases also, there is freedom and no one can stop it. Of course, this will be restricted to, suppose the child wants to go to an association where the fees is 5 lakh rupees and the parents say, I can't afford it. The state is not duty bound to provide that money and say, look here, you have a freedom and I will ensure that your rights are upheld. Now, Article 16. No arbitrary and or unlawful interference with his or her privacy, family, home, or correspondence, and no unlawful attack on his or her honor and reputation. So nobody in this world can say a child of 17 years, he cannot be subject to any invasion of privacy, and nobody can interfere in his thought process or enter his home or enter into the domain where the person is having correspondences, and his reputation cannot be tarnished merely based on certain beliefs of other people. Now, Article 17. Child has a right to access information material from a diversity of national and international sources, especially those aimed at promotion of his or her social, spiritual, and moral well-being and physical and mental health. State has to encourage the mass media to disseminate information and material of social and cultural benefits to the child. Encourage international cooperation in production, exchange, and dissemination of such information and material from a diversity of culture, national and international sources. Encourage the production and dissemination of children's books. Encourage the mass media to have particular regard to the linguistic needs of the child who belongs to a minority group or who is indigenous. Encourage the development of appropriate guidelines for protection of the child from information and material injurious to his or her well-being. Now, this last paragraph is very important. The state has to formulate appropriate guidelines for protection of a child from information and material injurious to the well-being of a child. Now, today when we see the TV, there are many ads which are not appropriate for a child of 10 years or 12 years to see, or maybe even 14 years to see. The state is duty bound to formulate all such regulations which are necessary for the purpose of protection of such children from being exposed to such information or materials. It also includes now internet. If you see, there is a child lock in every mobile. The state is bound to ensure that the child is not exposed to pornography, is not exposed to anything which is harmful in nature. Now, recently we heard a case where boys' room were there, all these children, the boys were of age of 17. Now, how did they develop the idea of having a rape or a group rape? This was based on certain informations which was injurious and which affected their mental well-being. So did the state take appropriate action? Did the state formulate any policy, or was there any attempt to ensure that such information is not easily accessible? Today, such guidelines are there and rather not there, because we have laws which prohibit pornography, but it is not so widely used, or it is not so powerful enough to be implemented. Now it talks about international and national resources. It talks about children books. It talks about linguistic needs. Now we know our entire nation, we talk about 20, 30 languages. But to be honest, there are several other languages which are not recognized as per law. These languages may be restricted to an ethnical group. It may be restricted to a tribe. There may be linguistic need of the child. So a child staying in, say, for example, Kerala, if he wants to, he is linguistic minority, if he is Assami in Kerala. So the government has to encourage such mass media that such children who are belonging to minority groups are not left out. They have to ensure that there are adequate children books. They have to ensure that there is enough information which is available online to ensure that the cultural, national and international resources are provided to the children. So all these things, if you go through, you'll realize that most of the articles are not implemented by not only India, rather all states. Article 18, both parents have common responsibilities for upbringing and development of the child. State has to render appropriate assistance to the parents and legal guardians in performance of their child rearing responsibilities, and ensure that the development of institutions, facilities and services for care of the children. State shall take all appropriate measures to ensure that children of working parents have the right of benefit from child care services and facilities for which they are eligible. The article basically provides that if the child parents are negligent, first of all, the state has to ensure that they inform the parents of what are their responsibilities. Now, whether we stay in India, in Maharashtra or Delhi or Assam or Tamil Nadu, no state does it. Now here, when I say state, I don't mean the country. I am talking about the state within the state. That's states within India. Even at national level, if you see, there is no such attempt made by the government. Even at international level, if you see, there is not much attempt done with regard to the same. At the most, you can have YouTube channels, or there are private people who are promoting this sense of responsibility on how, as a parent, you should act. But technically, if you ask me, there has to be institutions which has to be there to ensure that when a person is going to become a parent, when they are planning to become a parent, or when they have conceived, there should be proper awareness created. They should be made to understand what are the responsibilities and what are their duties towards children. Apart from this, the state has to ensure that they create certain child care services and facilities across the state, so that wherever the parents are working, the children are taken care of. Now, I don't know if you have seen it. I have not seen proper child care services provided by the state. I am not talking about private child care services. So wherever the idea was to ensure that because of financial needs, if both parents have to work, there has to be proper child care services at very reasonable rate. It should not happen that both parents are working and their major chunk of money goes towards child care services. Mere child care services is not important. They have to ensure that these child care services are appropriate, up to the mark, and are ensuring that the child rights are not violated. Article 19. Child has a right to protection from all forms of physical or mental violence, injury or abuse, neglect or negligence treatment, maltreatment and exploitation, including sexual abuse, while in the care of parents, legal guardians or any other person who has the care of the child. I don't think I need to explain all these articles, and basically the child has right over all kinds of exploitation. I'll come to Article 20. The child temporarily or permanently deprived of his or her family environment cannot be allowed to remain in that environment and shall be entitled to special protection and assistance provided by the state, and the state has to provide for alternate care of such child. Now, earlier I told you that there is provision So suppose a child has become orphan, he is deprived of his or her family. It becomes the duty of the state to ensure that there is proper assistance and proper protection provided to such children, and the state has to arrange for alternate means so that this child does not remain deprived of the family environment. You have to provide the family environment. You can't say that you be on the street or you beg on the street, or there will be only some temporary shelter homes for children. Now, all this is technically illegal as per Article 20. You have to ensure that the child is provided a proper family environment. He may be put to adoption, or you may create either any other alternate means. Now, Article 21, proper system of adoption has to be set up by the state, that the best interest of the child shall be paramount in consideration in the adoption, be it within state or cross country. So this provides that you have to ensure that whenever a child is transferred in adoption, whether it is orphan or whether it is from one parent to another or from a poor family to a rich family, you have to ensure that you frame in such laws and such rules and such review mechanisms that the best interest of the child is protected. And even if it is cross country, so suppose there is a child in, say, Bangladesh and somebody in Nepal has adopted the child, both states are liable to ensure that the best interest of the child is done. You can't have a child as a vegetable or a commodity where X picks up the child, takes home, and you are not aware. The state cannot say, no, Bangladesh cannot say, the child was taken by Nepal, I am not concerned, the family must have taken care. And Nepal cannot say that I have not brought the child. The parents have brought it, they have adopted from Bangladesh, he is a Bangladeshi child, I am not concerned. That cannot be done. Now, Article 22 talks about the right of the child if a refugee. Now, this I am not elaborating because this is a very hyper-technical terms which is generally not applicable to this nation. Article 13, disabled child shall have a right to decent upbringing and the state to ensure that all facilities are created to facilitate the best upbringing. In India, we know that if a child is physically handicapped, most schools and most colleges do not admit the child as a student. Maybe a person who cannot walk or uses a stick is admitted, but if there are different disabilities. Now, disability doesn't mean hand is not there or eyes is not there. It can be any kind of thing. So you will not find a blind child being admitted to a regular school. You will not find that a child who is having no proper legs and no proper hands, he is admitted to the school. So for such disabled children, it is the duty of the state to ensure that there is provision made for decent upbringing, and the state has to ensure those facilities. So the state has to ensure that there is a blind school. The state has to ensure that whatever disability the child suffers, the child knows that I am disabled, but the child should not be afraid or should not go into the backdrops or should not feel as if he is useless because of the disability. Now, Article 24, child right to health, food, environment, and water. The state has to even abolish all traditional practices which affect child health. This effectively means a right against malnutrition. We all are aware that maybe 20 to 30% of the world's children are suffering from malnutrition. We all know worldwide 70% of the nations do not have proper drinking water, or if they have, it is restricted to the elite. The poor are drinking water from the flowing streams or unhealthy water, or from ponds which are dirty, or from lakes which are affected. So it is a duty of the state to ensure that such facilities which are created are proper. In fact, the midday meal system which you hear is part of that program. Any practice, if it affects the child health, even if it is a traditional practice in that nation, this is in relation to mostly African countries, this has to be abolished. For example, we had Child Marriage Act. Now, we signed the treaty later on, but there are many nations where there is child marriage still going on. There are many countries where we have that the children are treated shabbily, or in all such countries, even if the traditional practices require child marriage, all this has to be abolished. Periodic review if child is with competent authority. Now, suppose a child is not with his natural guardian. The child is in custody of the competent authority, which means suppose a child has done something wrong and under juvenile act, he has been sent to the appropriate place. Now, in such cases, there has to be a periodic review of the child's health, the child's mindset, the child's upbringing from time to time. Now, the child has a right to benefit from social security, including social insurance within the resources of the state. Now, this article technically is not applicable to India because we do not have social security system. Recently, in the last 4-5 years, we are seeing some social security schemes have been brought in by the government, and in fact, Mr. Modi has also brought in some social security for those who are deprived. Now, child, merely because he is not a vote bank, you cannot say social security is for the father but not the children. Social security scheme of health is for the mother but for not the children, or not available to the person who is an orphan. So all this social security or social insurance, whatever resources you are creating within the nation, all this has to be extended to the children. Article 27. Every child has a right to a standard of living adequate for child's physical, mental, spiritual, moral, and social development. The state has a power to act against parents if they ignore the same. Now, what it means is, suppose there are parents, we have seen it, in fact, in India, it was earlier very predominant, that people used to discard children if they are of a particular gender. Females were thrown out, children were thrown out. Or there was discrimination that the male child will be given everything, but the female child will be treated as if she is going to be the maid or servant, domestic help of the house. In fact, there are matters where the transgender children are there. The child is left out. The child is thrown out. The parents have a good standard of living, but the child is not given the appropriate care. Physical upbringing is affected, mental upbringing is affected, spiritual, moral, social development, everything is affected. Now, in such case, it is a duty of the state to ensure that they act against the parents. Another example, a rich father leaves the wife, a rich man leaves his wife and the children and goes away. He's rich enough, he's enjoying, he's got all kinds of cars, facilities, etc., and the mother has nothing. Now, as per law, we have the system of applying for maintenance for children also. So, the state has to ensure that the standard of living of the child is such which is at par with the parents or what parents can afford. Article 28. Child has a right to education. State is bound to make primary education compulsory and available to all. The state has to encourage the development of different forms of secondary education, including general and vocational education, make them available and accessible to every child, and take appropriate measures such as introduction of free education and offering financial assistance in the case of need. Further, higher education must be accessible to all on basis of capacity by appropriate means. I'm sure everybody will be wondering, if we had this article implemented, what will be the state of the education sector in this nation. We know that today all parents are having one grievance: education fees. Schools are overcharging. They are forcing particular kind of uniform. They are forcing that you buy books from particular organization. But after this treaty, technically, if you ask me, the nation, India as a nation, is bound to provide primary education free of, compulsorily and free of cost. You cannot say that a particular child belongs to a very, very poor family and his parents cannot send the child for education, so education is not to be given to the child. You cannot deprive, you have to make it compulsory, available, free to all. Further, the duty of this nation is to develop different forms of secondary education, including general and vocational education, and ensure it is available to all. Now, education is a state subject, it's not a central domain. Very unfortunately, when we have divided the work of the nation between state and center, we forgot that these things will result in discrimination, where you have some states the children are getting best of the education and some states the children do not have the education. You go to a poor state like Jharkhand and Bihar, you will realize that 10% or 20% of the children have not got even the primary education. And there are states like Punjab where education is easily accessible and available. This article was to ensure that even vocational training, for example, a tribal person is there, he completes education, he cannot access further education, he gets vocationally trained to ensure that he is able to get his livelihood. Secondary education or higher education. Now, when we refer higher education, it is post graduation. Secondary education is different. So, higher education must be also accessible to all on the basis of capacity by every appropriate means. So, if a person is not able to afford higher education, the state has to ensure that by whatever means they have to ensure that the higher education is provided to all children. Article 29. Aim and objective of the education, the development of child personality, talents, and mental and physical abilities to their fullest potential. There are more details which are provided in the article. I have not produced the same. The idea was discussed so that you are aware of what is the purpose of having the education done for the children. Now, Article 13, right of the child belonging to minority to enjoy his or her own culture, religion, language, and community. We are lucky we are born in this nation. Here, even if you are a group of 20 people having a particular culture, religion, language, community, nobody can deprive you of the said right. So by this standard, the entire world is secular for every child. You are in Saudi Arabia and you can practice Judaism. You are in Vatican, you can practice Islam. You are in any other country, say Bangladesh or Pakistan, you can even practice Buddhism. So a child cannot be deprived of the same, but unfortunately, the world signs some treaty, but does certain other acts, and the rules apply only to the poor nations. The rich countries or the powerful nations get away depriving the child's rights. So idea of secularism is born inbuilt in the child rights. Article 31 has child has a right to rest, leisure and play. We find many places that children are not allowed to play. A female child is there, they say, no, you are a female child, our religion doesn't allow you to go out, or you cannot see a movie, or you cannot rest. All these children rights, these are violation of child rights. Article 32. A child has a right against economic exploitation and protection from working in hazardous environment. Now, generally, you will not find a child of 4 years or 5 years working in any kind of organization. But if you go to any tea shop, especially the semi-rural, rural areas, you find in every tea stall there is a child. They'll call Chotu Chaila. So technically, if the child is poor, he cannot be exploited and he cannot be forced to work. And more so if you are asking him to work, for example, in a coal industry. You can't say you carry the cement bags on your head and deliver it to the site, construction site. So the state is duty bound to ensure that such exploitation of children are stopped, whether he has a parent or not, he doesn't have a parent, or he's by religion, X community religion, he follows Y religion, or he has particular linguistic or particular parent. Even a criminal son or daughter has equal rights, and merely because his parents are criminal, you cannot discriminate. Article 33, child has to be protected against harmful drugs and narcotics. It is a duty of the state to ensure that the child is not exposed to drugs, narcotics. It is a duty of the parents, the surroundings and everyone involved to ensure that the child is, whether he is of 15 or 17 or 12, you have to ensure that he is protected against the harmful drugs and narcotics. Now, Article 34, Child has a right to be protected against all forms of sexual exploitation and sexual abuse, and right against being forced into prostitution. Female children are, especially from poor families, if you go any brothel, you'll find girls of 16, 17, 18. They are forced to be in prostitution. Nobody loves to be in prostitution. So, and you also find that there are cases of sexual abuse. Teachers may abuse, relatives may abuse. So sexual abuse. Now here you don't have a gender of female only. There can be exploitation of males also. So any form of sexual abuse, exploitation, or prostitution, a child is to be protected. If you find a child being exploited, you have to inform the state, and the state is duty bound to protect the child. Article 35. Child has a right to protection against sale and child trafficking. We all know in Arab worlds we have seen, and even in Africa, wherever there is poverty, the poor is bought over by the rich. There are many places where the children are taken away and illegally, and they are sold. They are made to work for sexual pleasures. They are made to work for economic reasons. They are made to work as any other thing. So all this is a violation of the right, and all these children across the world, they have a right to be protected against the same. Article 36. The child has a right of protection against any kind of exploitation. Now what they have done is, this is a residual clause. So whatever they have covered is fine. If something else is there, any kind of exploitation which is not covered in the rights and articles above, the child has a right to be protected against that. Now Article 37, child has a right against detention, cruelty, torture, capital punishment, and even life imprisonment. Now we have the Juvenile Protection Act, which we had enacted much prior to this act and much prior to signing of the treaty. India is one nation where we have partially implemented the child rights even before signing the treaty. There are many nations where based on your nationality, or based on your belief, or based on your work culture, you are detained. There is cruelty, there is torture. Now we need not tell you that some of the nations is Pakistan, where we hear daily Hindus being, because you are a Hindu, you are detained, or cruelty is exerted upon children. You see that a girl of 17 years is taken away, forced to convert into Islam, or even forced to marry. Similar is the case in Pakistan. If you see, the Muslims are exploited in a particular region. They are forced not to follow their religion. They are detained in a particular camp. They are taught what the Chinese government wants, and there is no freedom. Worldwide, there is no capital punishment and even life imprisonment for children. Now, when we see rape cases or the rapist is of 17, we always talk. Why the government doesn't change the law? Such rapists should be hanged. Now they cannot change because of Article 37. This cannot be changed worldwide unless you go to the UN and get the laws amended. We are bound by treaty and we have implemented the law. Article 38. In case of armed conflict, also child rights are to be respected. Suppose there is a war between India and Pakistan. India enters into the territory of Pakistan and we are at Lahore. You can't say, no, he's a Pakistani, we are at war, he is the child of the enemy. The child is not an enemy. The child is a child, whether it is your own or your enemy. So you have to, even in case of war, you have to ensure that you respect the child rights, irrespective of the nationality, irrespective of the birth, irrespective of the language, irrespective of linguistic usage, irrespective of the customs they follow. So the child's right has to be respected as it is even in case of armed conflicts. Now Article 13, state duty to take care or to take all appropriate measures to promote physical and psychological recovery and social reintegration of child victim. This is very important. Now suppose a child is a victim of any of the above. He may have been exploited sexually, the child may have been subjected to access to pornography and his mental condition is such that he is not a normal child, or even if you feel he is a normal, according to law he is not normal. A child is a victim of war, a child is a victim of their parents, a child may be a victim of society. So the to promote and the child recovers and becomes a normal child. Article 40 talks about juvenile law, that is punishments, etc. I am not going deep into it. Article 14, if existing laws of a nation are better, then better laws will prevail. This means, suppose this UN convention provides for certain rights, and if India has already passed certain laws which are much better, then the better laws will prevail. And if the laws are not appropriate or not as per the UN convention, then UN law will prevail. So it is superstition of the better laws, whether it is by state or member state or the UN. Article 42 states to make the principles and provisions of the convention widely known by appropriate and active means. This is very important. I am sure no one has seen the principles and provisions of convention as a non-law student or as a common man. Maybe in college or as a law student you may have read it, or you may have attendance of convention or read about it. But the state or Indian state and its states, that is the union and the states, have not taken any measures for promotion of the convention, and they have not ensured Article 42 is complied with. Now, Article 43 and 52 is how convention works, and we need not go into the same. Now, to implement this, we had enacted this act in 2005. There are commissions which are created. Now, what the commissions are? There has to be a chairman, person of eminent work for child rights. I am giving just the titles, whereas if you go, it is deeply explained. There has to be 6 other members. Now, 6 members have to be from 6 different categories. One from education, one from child rights, healthcare, welfare or child development, one from juvenile justice or child disability, one from elimination of child labor, one from child psychology, and one law related to children. Out of these, you have to ensure that there is one representation per category. This is for the center also and the state commissions also. The national commission is at Delhi, and the states have to form their own state child rights commissions. Generally, they function at the capital cities. Now, what are the functions of the commission under Section 13? They can examine laws and recommend measures for implementation of laws. So suppose they find some laws are there, or there is some lacuna, or there is no law for a particular purpose, they can recommend it. They can inquire and recommend action in case of child right violation. They can study treaties and make reports and recommendations. They have to promote child rights. They can do research in child rights. They can look into child education and promote awareness. And they can send reports and recommendations in relation to child rights. Power of the commission under Section 14. They have a power to summon and cause appearance of a person. Discovery and production of documents can be done. They can receive evidence on affidavits. They can requisition public documents or their copies. They can issue commissions for examination of witness and or documents. And they can also, in case of criminal offences, or they feel that the requirement of law is such that it should be tried by magistrate, they can forward the case as if the case has been forwarded under Section 346 of CRPC. The local magistrate, that is the magistrate of first class, or the chief metropolitan magistrate, has to do the appropriate action. Now, what other powers they have? They can recommend to the central and the state authority for prosecution of a case if so required. So if they feel no, they don't want to recommend it to magistrate, they can recommend to the state government, that is to the Ministry of Women and Child Rights. Every state has it. They even have the powers to approach High Court and Supreme Court for direction if writ orders are required. And they can prepare annual reports, etc., for the purpose of study, research, and even implementation. Now, Children Court. Now, as per Section 25, children courts are to be created by the state in concurrence with the Chief Justice of India. Chief Justice of the High Courts. Now, the purpose of such a children court is speedy trial of child right violation, and if there is already a notification of special court, that court becomes a children court. So in Maharashtra we have special court, in Delhi we have the special court, so we need not notify it as children court separately. And as per Section 26 special public prosecutor with minimum 7 years experience has to be appointed. Now I come to the end of this particular slideshow. Now I will be going to a particular judgment to ensure that you are aware what the courts had to say. Now this is the judgment which was argued by me. It was Public Interest Litigation 84 of 2013, Forum for Fairness in Education versus Union of India. Now we had argued three things. We had argued, one was that the Child Right Commission was not in place. The category which was given of 6 people were not there, and even the chairman was not there. It is the government officer who was acting as a chairman, and there was a member secretary, and there was hardly any proceedings. We pointed out to the court that orders are not uploaded. We pointed out that RTI is not complied with. We pointed out that there is glorification of only one man, that is the secretary. We pointed out none of the provisions of the act is implemented, and we also pointed out that this particular tribunal or commission has no power to pass any orders and only has a power to recommend or refer the case to High Court, Sessions Court, that is the Children's Court, or Supreme Court of India. What was done was that there were pronouncement of orders as if the member secretary is a judge of a court. So when we brought it to the light of the court heard us at length, and there were several directions which were passed. Now I'll only go to the relevant court paragraphs, which is page 17 onwards. Para 15 onwards. Now coming back to the provisions of the said Act, Section 25 provides for establishment of Children's Court. The object of Section 25 appears to be to ensure that there is speedy trial of offences against the children as well as the violation of child rights. Section 26 provides for appointment of special public prosecutors for the purpose of conducting cases before Children's Court. We must note here that appointing special public prosecutors under Section 26 is not an empty formality. The state government has appointed existing public prosecutors as special public prosecutors. The object of 26 appears to be to ensure that only those members of the bar who are conversant with the laws regarding the rights of the children and who will be able to discharge their duties, taking into consideration the object of the said Act, should be appointed as the special public prosecutors under Section 26. The state government will have to consider the question whether women members of the bar should be given priority when it comes to the appointment of the special public prosecutor under 26. Because our contention was that a child is of 6 years or 4 years, is a girl child is raped. What will the public prosecutor do? He will ask certain questions which are uncomfortable. The male doesn't know the psychology of the child. So according to us, there should have been proper training, and we preferred a lady public prosecutor. Our attention is invited in the affidavit of the state government, and in particular Exhibit D to the said affidavit, which is in the notification dated 30th July 2009, specifying that all the public prosecutors, additional public prosecutors appointed under Section 24(3) of the Code of Criminal Procedure shall be the special public prosecutors for conducting cases before Children's Court. Appointment of special public prosecutor under 26 requires application of mind, appropriate authority of the state government before nominating any public prosecutor or any member of the bar as a special public prosecutor under 26 will have to ascertain whether the person sought to be appointed as a special public prosecutor will be capable of discharging duties as a special public prosecutor considering the object of the said Act. The state government has to ensure that the member of the bar who are capable of discharging the duties as special public prosecutor are appointed under Section 26. Therefore, the state government will have to reconsider the notification dated 30th July 2009. In light of the observations made by us, and the state government will have to take proper steps and appointment of proper special public prosecutors considering the scheme of the said Act and especially Section 26 of the said Act. The state government will have to also ensure that the regular training is imparted to those persons who are appointed as special public prosecutor under Section 26 of the said Act. Now, unless and until the public prosecutor is updated about psychology, about the mindset of the child, the public prosecutor will not be able to function. However, the person may be aware of the child rights, he has to undergo the training for psychology also. Now, next paragraph, section 17. The other issue is regarding creation of awareness and creating helpline to assist the children. The Learned Council, appearing for the petitioner, has relied upon United Nations Convention on the rights to the child, 1989, and in particular Article 42. Now, the right to the child, 1989, was a convention, and that convention was later on, when the treaty was signed, was called the Child Right Convention. Apart from which, Article 42 I have already read out. Apart from creating awareness as contemplated by the said convention, it will be appropriated if the state government as well as the central government provide for giving adequate publicity not only to the provisions of the said act, but also to the provisions of various enactments dealing with violation of rights to children. Both the governments will have to give adequate publicity to the rights of the children, which are spelled out from various provisions, including the provisions of the said act, as well as the remedies available in case of violation of the rights of children and machinery created by the state government as well as the central government under the said act, as well as other requests. So they have to provide the call center numbers, they have to provide public prosecutor numbers, everything. Apart from giving wide publicity, as stated above, a grievance redressal mechanism will have to be set up by the state government for entertaining grievances regarding violation of the rights of children. The children who are the victims of the violation may not be in a position to make any complaint. Therefore, as far as the state government is concerned, it will have to create grievance redressal mechanism for receiving grievances regarding violation of the children's rights of the children. The mechanism will provide for receiving complaints in traditional form, i.e. form of writing, as well as receiving complaints on dedicated toll-free number as well as dedicated website. Provisions shall also be made for receiving complaints by using media like WhatsApp application. The grievances redressal mechanism must also provide for entertaining anonymous complaints as regards major or gross violation of rights of children, so that informant may not become the victim himself. It's not many, it may not become the victim himself. Because I pointed out to the court, now suppose I find that the child, there is a girl of 15-year-old who is employed as a domestic help in some neighboring house, and the child is subjected to some sexual abuse. If I file a complaint with my own name, it is possible that I may become a victim of the society, or even the member who is my neighbor may target me in the future. So the court upheld those contention. The Learned Council, appearing for the petitioner, relied upon the order passed by this court in said PIL 125 of 2010. While giving publicity as directed above, the state government will have to consider the directions issued by this government in the said PIL. A wide publicity will have to be also given to availability of the grievance redressal mechanism. Now this PIL which is referred, suo moto, was a PIL under RTI Act. So it was in relation to senior citizen, where the court went to the extent that you have to give publicity in a particular manner, electronic form also, with regard to Senior Citizen Act. So identical provisions are in the child rights. So we pointed out that since the children are not voters, it is appropriate that such mechanism should also be provided for this, and this has to be read under Article 42 of the International Convention. Now straightforward jump to page 27, where the directions was passed. Now, apart from appointment, etc., the court laid down the procedure of appointments, and then the court stated, that is paragraph 5, the state government shall take proper steps for appointment of special public prosecutor in terms of section 26 of the said act, in light of the observation made by this court, as expeditiously as possible, and in any event within a period of 3 months on the date on which authentic copy of this judgment and order is produced by the petitioner with the law and judicial department of the state. We direct the state government to ensure that proper facilities for giving regular training to special public prosecutor appointed under section 26 of the said act are made available. If necessary, the state government may consider approaching the Maharashtra Judicial Academy with a request to provide regular training to special public prosecutors. Then in the next paragraph, the court said, we direct the central and state governments to take steps for creation of awareness about the provisions of the said act, as well as all other enactments relating to the rights of children, and about the remedies available under the said enactments, and the machinery which is available under the said enactments. Adequate publicity shall be given not only on media, both electronic and printed, but also by use of radio channels such as FM channels, by preparation of documentary films, etc. The state government shall come out with such scheme as regard giving publicity in terms of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Child 1989, as well as in terms of what we have discussed above. The state government shall immediately take steps for giving necessary publicity and for creation of grievance redressal mechanism. The details of the steps taken shall be placed on record within a period of 2 months. Now, this is not done. For creation of helpline and grievances redressal mechanism, we grant 2 weeks time to the state to take from today to take appropriate steps. Now, I would not be going further into any other details because all the particulars as of now are completed. The state has not complied with. In fact, forget the Maharashtra state. I have not seen a single state comply with the same. I have not seen the center comply with the same. The truth today is that even we as lawyers and we as normal citizens have failed and neglected in our duties towards children. We will not find anyone calling up the helpline or giving an email to the government stating that you saw a poor child begging on the street. No one. It includes us also. It includes me also. Rarely it is done. There is hardly any interest in child rights. Whoever is interested is not interested in the child's rights. They are interested basically that I am a parent. Look here, I have to pay so much fees. So their financial requirements are the target of such grievances, not the child rights. You will never find any major complaint if you go to child rights commissions of every state. Many states you will find that the commission is not in place, or if it is there, it is run by a IS officer. The orders are not uploaded. There are no hearings as required. There is no inquiry. The reports, annual reports are of 2014, 15, 13. Even the appointment, what category they fall into is not given. You will find the appointments, but which category and from what date to which date is not given. So there is no attempt by the center or any of the states to give any publicity to the rights, and no one is interested in the child right because he is neither the vote bank and he is neither our friend. So basically the entire theory of the International Convention has collapsed worldwide. It's not India, worldwide. We do not respect the child as per the International Convention, and we do not take pains to ensure that the rights is implemented. Now with this, I would request for the question answer session. Neeraj, is there any questions? I would answer the same. I am sure with regard to children, there will be no questions. Mr. Neeraj Shah. Mr. Devendra Tiwari, are there any questions?
Sir, there is no question, sir.
Okay. So I assume either people are not interested or I was so fantastic I explained the entire concept.
So it was very interesting and very informative, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. And before we end, I must thank Mr. Sagar Nevarse, who's from the Jan Adalat. There are a lot of seminars. They are doing day-to-day lectures in Pune district, and they hold a lot of Lok Adalat. They are very helpful. Thank you, Sagar, for co-hosting it. Thank you, everyone, for bearing me so patiently. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.